Hello friends, this is Asif Khwaja from ATH Business Solutions. Today I'm going to show you how you can give your Power Apps users read, write or edit access to your SharePoint list data sources without letting them access the SharePoint lists directly outside the Power App. Many people have asked me that when they create a Power App connected with SharePoint data and share the app link with any users, the users are also able to see the SharePoint data directly in SharePoint, because obviously in order for the app to work properly, the users need to have access, which is read-only or edit access to the data in SharePoint. Now, even though you may only have shared the Power App link with your users and not the SharePoint site or list links, they may still see or find the links either on their SharePoint homepage or in any search results, which will give them access to the SharePoint site and hence to the data. In this video, I will share a method I use to control the Power App users' access to my SharePoint lists. I want to make sure that the users of my Power App can read, write, edit, or delete data in SharePoint through the Power App only and not by accessing the SharePoint lists directly. So let's see how this can be done. So in this browser here, I'm logged in into my Power Apps portal here, and we have a SharePoint site called Project Management, and on this side we have a list called Projects with a few columns in there. As you can see, title, short description, project manager, who is this project assigned to, priority and start date, and there are a couple of example projects sitting here. Now I can either create a Power App directly from Power Apps by going into Power App or creating a blank Power App from here, or I can also create a Power App from here in SharePoint by going into the integrate section, and then from Power Apps I can click on create an app. So let's create an app that way quickly. We can give this app a name called Projects Power App. So here it is. This is our basic app. We are not going into the details of how to customize this app and all those sort of things, because the focus of this video is just to see how we can control the access of this Power App. So let's save and publish this app. Once this is published, we can share this app also. So right now you can see that I'm the only owner of this app because I just created this app. I can choose to share it with individual users. For example, Chris Green. We have an employee called Chris Green, and we can share this app with that user. Or if this is a company-wide Power App and we want to share it with everyone, then I can also say everyone in our company, and I will make sure that I don't choose send an email, because otherwise it will send an email across my company to everyone. So I don't want to spam people with that email. So let's uncheck that, and also note that I'm using these as users and not co-owners, right? So we don't want to make them owners. We just want them to be able to use our Power App. So let's share the app with them. Now also note that even though we have shared the app with everyone in our company, those people also need to have access to our SharePoint data that we have created this app for. So let's go back to our SharePoint list. This is our SharePoint list. Let's look at the list settings and then look at the permissions for this list. You will see that this list actually inherits permissions from its parent, which is the project management site itself. So let's go in there. Now this site has those default permissions. As you can see, we have three groups: members, owners, and visitors. The members group will give anyone in that group edit access or read and write access to the data on our SharePoint site. Owners group will have full control, and the visitors group will give anyone in that group read access. If you look at these groups now, the visitors group, actually there is no one in the visitor group. So no one has read access to our SharePoint site. And then if we look at the project management members group, again, there is a project management members group, which is an Office 365 group. Because this SharePoint site is based on an Office 365 group, then anyone who is the member of that group will get membership of this group, the SharePoint group, and they will get edit access to the SharePoint site and the data itself. And at the moment for this SharePoint site, there is no member except myself. And owners group also has only me as an owner. So essentially, there is no one added on this SharePoint site. No one has access to this SharePoint site. Okay. So that means the users of my Power App don't have access to the SharePoint list yet. Now, if we add everyone in our members group of this SharePoint site, everyone except external users, and I'll make sure that we don't spam them again. Now that I have added everyone in the project management members group, this will give them edit access to all of my SharePoint site, including that projects list. Now, anyone who can access the Power App will also have access to my SharePoint data with read and write and delete access, because we have added everyone into the members group, which is giving everyone edit access. And this is not what we want, right? Because we don't want them to be able to come to this SharePoint site and click on the projects list and see all of this data here. We don't want to do this. But just to give you an understanding, if we take this link and share it with our users to see what they can do, let's go to one of our users. I'm logged in as another user here. The user's name is Chris Green, as you can see. And because we have given everyone edit access to our SharePoint site, read and write access to our SharePoint site, Chris is able to see our SharePoint site. And then they can also see this projects list on the left-hand side. And if they click on the project list, they are able to see the data in there, because obviously we have given everyone edit access to our SharePoint site. If you go to the site contents page, they can see everything here, and including projects list. Again, they can go in and look at the SharePoint list also. Now, if they try to access the Power App, and now you can see that the user, who is Chris Green, is able to access this Power App and is able to see the data from their SharePoint list. He is able to edit that data. Let's say we want to change the priority from medium to high for this project X, and save it and go back. And now if we go and check our SharePoint data, you can see that the data has been updated. Previously it was medium priority. Now both of these projects have high priority. So the user is able to edit the data through that Power App, but then you can also see that same user is also able to go into the SharePoint list and see the data there also. And this is not what we want. We want them to be able to do whatever they want to do through this app. If the app is allowing them to edit data or delete data, this is where they should be doing all those things, not directly in SharePoint here. Okay, so for this, let's go back to our own browser here. Now for this to happen, we will need to play around with some permissions on this SharePoint list or this SharePoint site, and this is the critical part that we need to understand. All right, so what we are going to do, let's go into the list settings, and again permissions for this list. As you can see, these are the default permissions, and these permissions are inherited from the SharePoint site. Now, one thing that we need to understand here is that if we want to control the user's access to just that list, the projects list, and not to the whole SharePoint site, then we can stop inheriting the permissions here on this list and change our permissions on this list. Okay. But if we want to do it on the whole site level, we just don't want them to see any other lists or content or any other data on this SharePoint site, not just this projects list, then we can, rather than doing it on individual list level and stopping inheritance on all lists, we can actually do it at site level. Okay. And for this particular example, I will go and do it at site level. And also remember that the permission tweak that we are going to do here, it's not that once we do that, they will lose access to the SharePoint site completely. They will still be able to come to the SharePoint site, see SharePoint site's pages and all other information. It's just that they won't be able to see the data on their SharePoint site. Okay, so that's very useful. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new group, a permission group in SharePoint site. The reason we are going to create a new group is because the existing group, we can't edit the permissions for these existing groups on this SharePoint site, because this particular site is linked to an Office 365 group, and that's why we can't edit the permissions of these groups. Otherwise, you could have just edited the permissions of this particular group and work it that way. But we will create a new group. Let's create a new permission group, and we will call it Power App users. And For group owners, instead of making an individual group owner, we can make the project management owners group the owner of that new group that we are creating, so that they can change the membership of that particular group. We will not define any permissions here. We will simply create a group and we'll call it Power App Users. Let's create that group. When you create the group, it actually adds you to that group by default. So let's remove myself. Okay, so the group has been created. Now let's go back to our site permissions. So this is our site permissions. Let's make sure that we are in the site permissions section and not the list permissions. So let's go here. So this is our site permissions. These are the default permissions. And I will now go and grant permission to this new group that I just created, and we don't want to send an email invitation to anyone because these are all our internal employees. And for permission, for now, I will give them edit access. Okay, so let's refresh our page. So here's the group, Power App Users, and we have given them edit access. Now don't worry, because we are going to change that in a bit, but I just wanted to give them edit access for now. Now the next thing that we need to do is, obviously we need to change the permissions of this group from edit to something else. But first we will need to define a permission level for that. So let's go into the permission levels. These are our default permission levels that you can see are defined there. Now I have created one, which is actually a copy of the contribute permission. And let me show you how I created that. So let's go into the contribute permission level. Okay, so this is our contribute permission level with all different permission items selected here. What I will do is, rather than changing the contribute permission itself, I will create a copy of this permission level, and I will call this permission level contribute without list view. And what I will do, I will leave everything else as it is. So this permission level will give them add, edit, delete, view, all of that access. The only thing that we need to uncheck is this one, view application pages. This permission is something that actually allows users to go and look at the site content on the site contents page, and also look at the lists themselves and the list item forms and all those things, and application pages, not the SharePoint pages, but the application pages like site settings and things like those. Okay, the SharePoint pages, they will still be able to view. So let's uncheck that, and then let's leave everything else as it is. That's the only permission that we need to uncheck, and then create. So we have actually created a new permission, which is called contribute without list view. Or previously, when I was testing this, I created this contribute minus view list. So you can use either of these. They are both same permissions. Okay. Once this is created, now let's go back to our site permissions here, where we assign edit permission to this new group that we created, Power App Users. Let's select that group and edit permissions, uncheck edit, and select contribute without list view. This is the one that we just created. So we are not giving them edit permission, we are giving them contribute permission, which will give them view, read, write, edit, delete access on all the list items, but without list view permission. Okay, so let's click OK. Now one more thing we need to do is, if we go into the members group, which has edit permissions, you can see that the everyone is still there. We need to get rid of that, because otherwise people will still have edit access to all of our content. So let's remove the everyone group from our members group, and then go back, and our new group which we just created, let's add everyone here. So once we add everyone group here, we don't want to send them spam email again. Once we add everyone in our Power App Users group, they will get read and write and edit access to this SharePoint site, including our data, except that they will not be able to view that data in SharePoint. Isn't it interesting, right? So let's go back and make sure that all of our permissions are good. So visitors group is empty. Our members group is empty. Basically, only the Office 365 members group is there, which is empty at the moment. Owners group, again, no one is in the owners group. Only I have access as an owner to this whole SharePoint site. And then our Power App Users group. which is giving everyone contribute minus view list access. Now there is another group which I had previously created for the same purpose when I was testing, but as you can see, there is no one in that group also. So basically it's just this group, the Power App users group, which is giving everyone access to our SharePoint site. So once this is done, if I go to site contents page, you can see that because I'm the administrator of this SharePoint site, I can see the content on this site contents page. I can also click on projects list and see all of my data there. So I have full access because I'm the owner of this SharePoint site. But now if we switch our browser to the other user, who is Chris Green, okay, and let's go to the SharePoint site, you can see that Chris can still access SharePoint site. And if they try to access the Power App, let's refresh this page for them so that we can reload this Power App for Chris. You can see that Chris can see all the lists here, which is fine. We can go in and edit any data. So let's change this priority from high to low and save our data. Okay. Chris can even create a new project from here. So let's call it project test. This is a project created by Chris. Project manager, I can be a project manager, and then Chris can assign this project to himself. Okay, priority, we can say medium priority. Start date, we can say, okay, let's start this on 25th of October. Once all of this data has been given, they can also attach any files related to this project if they like. But let's save this data and see if we are able to save this data in our SharePoint list. And yes, we are. And you can see that the project test has been saved and the Power App is showing all of the projects there. Now, if Chris goes to the SharePoint site itself, so he happened to find this link somewhere in some search results, or someone shared the SharePoint site URL with them. So when they come to this SharePoint site, they will be able to see the site, no problem at all. But if they click on site contents, they will get a permission denied access there, because even though they have contribute permission, they are able to edit, delete, add data into the SharePoint lists. They cannot access the SharePoint lists on this SharePoint site because we have taken away their view lists permission for all the lists here. They can't even see the shared documents. If I go back to my browser as Asif Khwaja, you can see that I can see the site contents page. I can click on project SharePoint list, and I can see that Chris has created this new project test, which is showing up in this SharePoint list here. But Chris cannot see this list. If we even take this list URL directly and go into Chris's browser and just try to access that list directly using this URL, because he can't see that list in site contents page, then even then you will see that Chris will get access denied message for that SharePoint list. So if they go to site contents page, again, they will see access denied message there. But they will still be able to see SharePoint site. And if you have created some information pages, sharing information about their Power App or something else, they will still be able to come to this site, see all those pages, except that they won't have access to the data directly in this SharePoint site. And as I mentioned, what we have done, we have controlled the access for all of the lists on this SharePoint site. If you want them to see some lists and not others, then you will need to control the permission on those individual lists rather than at site level. All right. So I hope this is helpful and you can see the value of this approach by controlling the access for your Power Apps, where you want to share your Power Apps with users without giving them direct access to the data in SharePoint. If you like this video, please give it a thumb up. Thank you.